Welcome to Living Chassidus. Together, let's live the Chassidus we learn.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Chassidus in the Morning, 15 minutes, change your life, Heichaltzu. So, just a quick story in that once in like the late 80s, so the Rebbe and the Rebbitzin, they started to move in to where the library is for Shabbos. Instead of having to walk all the way back home, they just stay in the library. It was very close to the Rebbe and not to walk so far. But the Rebbitzin, she was a very private person. So the way she would get there is she would get picked up and she'd drive and she'd park behind by Union, and through the back there's like a back entrance, like a shortcut. People also use it nowadays, I think. It's closed now generally, but it's open a little bit. And so basically, one Shabbos after Erev Shabbos, as she was coming in, there was a bacher that he was running through the shortcut and he ended up bumping into. He didn't really realize he was in a rush, but then somehow he figured out later that he had bumped into the Rebbitzin Chaim Moshe. And he was like totally distraught about what he did. He felt really bad. So he ended up writing an apology to her. And so interesting. So he writes an apology. I'm really sorry about bumping into you. I didn't realize who it was, and like really forgive me. And he signed his name, proper apology. So I don't know if she told him or the person that gave it to her. She said to him, "Why do you have to write his name? Now I know who it is. I don't want to know who it is." She was very a lot of how she struggles. She felt bad. She didn't want to know, because even she said, even subconsciously, even though I have no hard feelings to him, but maybe subconsciously I do or something, so I don't want to know who it is. Which is showing us this level of bittul that we're talking about here, how much of Havaya, which is totally unity. She wants to be so united with the person, even subconsciously she doesn't want to be separated. So we're discussing the Maimon. We're in the middle of Eis Gimel. It sounds like this. In the second, I just had a lot of questions. First of all, the story of the war with Midian, it seems very much connected with Moshe, and Moshe has to do this, has to finish this war before he passes away. And we're asking why. What's the connection that Moshe has to wage war with Midian? It wasn't a war of conquering, it was sort of Nikamas Havaya. It was retribution of God for what they had done to the Jewish people that caused them to sin. So sort of getting them back. We're actually coming up in the next few parshas, we're going to get to it. So that's what we asked. And we said we see Moshe, it had to be done by Moshe, had something connected with Moshe. It couldn't be done by Yeshua, so we understand why. Also, we see that it says Nekamas Havaya that Hashem says to Moshe, you should have the Nekamas of Yisrael, you should do the retribution for the Jewish people. Whereas Moshe tells the Jewish people, he changes it and he says Nekamas Havaya. What's going on over there? And what we're seeing is that this level of Havaya is specific, not just general, but specific. And also we see, and as we're going to talk about in the Maimon, sort of the contrast in Havaya and Midian, that they're opposite each other. And that's why he had to come with this level of Havaya. Also, we asked, why does it say Heichaltzu, which means you shall arm yourselves, which implies everybody, but really there's only 1,000 people per tribe. So the language could have been Heichaltzu, meaning they should arm themselves, which would imply the army, not everyone. So then we said, no, to understand all this, we have to start understanding a little bit about what's the thing of Midian. And sort of there's this idea of separateness versus Havaya is about unity, about bittul. It's like we see by Yaakov and Esav. The Yaakov had 70 nefesh. It says that he had 70, but he says it wasn't. The word it uses for souls is in singular, nefesh, because they were like it says. He said yeshli kel, I have everything, which is skalos, which is coming together, bringing close unity, united. Whereas Esav, which is showing more on this idea of Midian, he said he had 6 souls, but he said yesh. This is nefashes, which is plural, which we see it's like a big contrast. And also, when he only has 6, but the whole plural, it's all separate. Now, so he said yeshli rav, I have many, but implying many distinct things, not united. And so we're seeing here this contrast in Midian and Shem Havaya in these different ways, how they're very separate. So we're going to continue going that. Let's go discuss it in its source. And we're going to talk about Kabbalistic concepts, because through understanding that's understanding the source of where this comes from. We have to understand everything. So we started talking about it. We have the tohu. In the world of tohu, that's where the source of that midjan comes from. Well, all sort of problems. Tohu is elikus. It's a holy level, and it's a very high level. And the problem with tohu is they can't get along together. There's gvura, there's chesed, and chesed and gvura don't come together. And we gave examples. It's like a person that's a very good person. When you come and tell them that you shouldn't actually give tzedakah to that person, put your news for bad things, he'll argue with you, and he's like, "Leave me alone. I'm doing chesed now." And that shows the ability not to come together. And even though we're gonna discuss more today. Okay, this reflects the one on the top of page 19. This reflects the well-known Kabbalistic concept of the shadowing the vessel Shvesa Kalim. We're going to discuss this Shvesa Kalim. It's a very famous idea. And when you appreciate these concepts, then you appreciate to learn them again and see it from little different angles and really get a good understanding, have a good bina on it. So sages said that God built worlds and destroyed them. In Chassidus, it explains that this refers to the world of tohu, chaos, which precedes our realm, the world of tikkun. Meaning we, in our realm, we're in tikkun, which is a lot of kalim and not a lot of light. They're going to discuss, and essentially this is called Shvesa Kalim, that because of this issue that we talked about before, that in tohu they can't get along, so it just didn't work, and it got destroyed. So this world got destroyed. And it says in the world of tohu, there was a lot of light, but not a lot of vessels. Meaning they didn't put in the effort, they weren't able to put themselves in a situation they could get along, and that destroyed. It's not, of course, not a healthy thing. Whereas tikkun, which is the world of tikkun rectifying, which is the opposite. There's not as much light, but a lot of vessels that had a lot of ability to come together, which is what we want. Yeah, the world of tikkun, but which was destroyed in the spiritual cataclysm, referred to as Shvesa Kalim, the breaking the vessels. And he's going to explain. And today's class, we're going to have a lot of these talks, explanations. It's very interesting. As the divine light and life energy begin to flow downwards to lower rungs, spheres, divine attributes comprising of Eris, light, and Kalim. So the way it goes from godliness as it goes down in levels, there's what is happening. You have Eris, you have the light of godliness, you have the Kalim, which is the vessel, receives the light. So that's how it works. So in the realm of tohu, the Eris were extremely intense and powerful. As a result, these attributes did not bond and interrelate with each other. The light was so powerful, so it couldn't really come together, like we said before. So they were absorbed in their own self-expression and could not conceive of and have difficulty tolerating another attribute. They were so stuck with their own way that they couldn't see any other way. And this is very much related to our time period in general. We have to look within ourselves. Are we like this? This reduced their stability. Moreover, the kalim intended for these lights was insubstantial in nature, and the kalim weren't powerful enough to be able to hold this and try to really work with us. As a consequence, they shattered, and their remnants, the sparks of tohu, to borrow Kabbalistic terminology, underwent a descent through the spiritual cosmos until they became enclosed in the material substance of our physical world. And it comes all the way down here, and this is our Aveda in this world, is to refine these sparks. It says by Yitzhak trying that refine 244 something, like a crazy amount out of that, whatever many we had left, 266, I think it was like, yeah, a lot. So the descent they underwent, they became more distant from godliness. Ultimately, the individuality that characterized them underwent a change. Their spiritual self-orientation turned into self-centered approach to all things. Because essentially they were kedusha, but they just weren't able to connect with one another. So when it broke and it came down, unfortunately, through this, and this is sort of what happens through the descent into all the worlds, it just made it worse, and it made them more coarse and feeling more of a separateness. Like in our world, we don't see godliness as much. Whereas you go in the higher worlds, like Yitzira, Bria, those worlds, there's a godliness is a lot more apparent. And that's what happened. So it was in a world where godliness was apparent, but as it came down, it became a lot less apparent until it came to this physical world that was totally not apparent. And so it itself had changed from being self-oriented, that's what it was before. It was all about itself. So it became self-centered. It's only about itself. So the fundamental self-orientation and tolerance that led to the shattering also brought about the division that characterized Kelipah Tzachram. And this is sort of the source of Kelipah Tzachram. Kelipah, and it's really a powerful message in essence. You see how everything starts off as good. And people in general are good. It gets as it goes down in levels, it loses that. So it's here. Kelipah of Sitra Achra and of Midjan and all the negative forces start off in a good place, just as it comes down through the Shreas of Kalim, through them not getting along properly there, and through coming through all the descent, the state of Ishtashalus, that makes it less apparent godliness. It gives it the ability more so to feel like separateness from God. So this constitutes the Kelipah of Midjan, i.e. qualities of strife, contention, and separateness. And that's how we have these things. Again, in the source, it's good, but as it comes down, suddenly become all these issues that we have, that we see in our own lives. This is the result of the fall that followed the shattering of tohu. So the Seder Ishtalshalus is characterized by a pattern of chain-like descent. The term chain-like is used because all the levels are interconnected, like the links of a chain. By contrast, the descent of the spark of tohu is described as a fall, because as the sparks exist in a state of descent, they have no connection to the initial level. And even more, meaning in general, Seder Ishtalshalus is like a chain-like descent. What's a chain? A chain is interlocked. You have the low one is connected with the high one. And so they're all connected. And so the process that comes down to this physical world, it's through, well, it's not exactly to this physical world, but it goes from Atzilus and it goes down. They're all connected to each other. And it's a slow progress that's needed in how to have to ultimately come to our physical world. And so in Atzilus, it's total godliness, but then it descends more. So then it's a feeling that there's an existence. It's an existence that's not just godliness. And then it goes to a lower level, which is a feeling of godliness also exists. But we also have our own existence. And then there's the lowest world, which is like our world, which is totally, godliness doesn't even feel that exists. And this is sort of what happens. But this is the orderly way, whereas Midjan is so bad that it didn't even go through, it just fell. So it sort of went through, but it didn't have that connection. Because ultimately, we can go trace ourselves, so to speak, back, because we're interconnected with all the levels above it. So when we do the right thing, we bring it all the way back. Whereas Midjan doesn't have that connection. So it's really difficult to bring it back. Yes, they have no connection to the initial level, in which the murdered attributes were discordant. In the realm of tohu, though their murdered attributes were discordant, they were all holy expressions of spiritual truth. However, after they shattered and fell, the fundamental qualities of self-orientation and separateness that characterizes the realm came into expression and received prominence. Yeah, and the separateness they felt, it totally took over. And even though they start off as spiritually true and holy, but what it came down all the way down here is not good. Therefore, Midjan is not included among the 7 nations who lived in Eretz Yisrael. As mentioned above, the Torah's narrative is not merely history, they present spiritual realities. The Jews were promised Eretz Yisrael in which lived 7 nations, the Canaanites, Hittites. These nations represent the 7 specific emotive attributes of the realm of evil. Each of these nations represent one specific attribute of tohu, the Canaanite, Chesed, the Hittite, Gvura, etc., as discussed in Kelipah Yaakov. So the point is, and we'll finish here, that in Eretz Yisrael, and we learn this in this week's Parsha Shalach, and the Rebbe has all mimer on this, how the purpose that the Yidden had to come to Canaan and transform into Eretz Yisrael, that to conquer the 7 nations, and take those 7 nations, which were representative of 7 klippos, 7 emotions in the negative, and elevate them to 7 emotions in the positive. And when Mashiach comes, we have 10. We have the other 3 that we do, but at the moment they only have those 7. And that's in Eretz Yisrael, and that's the conquer that we want to have in Eretz Yisrael. But remember in the story that Midjan, there was no conquering; it wasn't taking their land, because Midjan is not even part of this. It's not like a logical, it's not like an emotional thing. It's like a specific thing that's like we go to work and it's like 1 for 1. But this is negative; we have to make it positive. It's like this. It was totally off, as we'll see. And that's like we say, it's like baseless hatred. It's baseless. It's not logical. It's not a reasonable. It doesn't make sense. It's not a real thing. No one's done anything bad to you. That's what we're going to discuss more. To be continued tomorrow. And just so something to think about is, am I a tohu person? Am I a tikkun person? And again, we've talked about this a little before, but it's a very important point to realize. Am I able to balance myself? And if you think about it, it's like someone that has a different opinion on you than you. I think very much these days it seems to be very divided. That like we can't listen to someone else's opinion, and it's about learning to be able to hear someone else's opinion. Do I want to be a tohu? I can have good opinions, and it could be like it's like people in life that you see people that are very opinionated, and they've really formulated their opinions well, which is a good thing. Like tohu has a lot of energy, but part of it also has to be that you can put in tikkun, that you can refine it, and you can get along with other people and say, listen to someone else's opinion, and really have discussion. And ultimately, as we're going to explain the Maimon, that actually gives you a better understanding and a better unity. You can connect together. You don't have to agree, but you should try to understand each other. I want to look at ourselves. Are we understanding of other people's opinions, especially our roommates? They're doing things that we don't necessarily agree with. Are we understanding of them? Do we try to understand them, or we just argue, or just keep it to ourselves? But very much tohu, and it's like, okay, no, it's wrong, and that's it. To be continued tomorrow. Stop the recording.